All right. And
well, Dave, I'd like to interject.
So will Jim.
I want to interject something with a spread that's going to be less than 3 on the game. I would suggest people betting the money line because they just want to pick the winner of the game. Because the likelihood of it ending 1 or 2 is really remote.
What did I say? Yeah,
you said don't. I think you said don't.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's a mistake. Yeah, I mean the money line's cheap on the favorite. You're not going to get much of a return on the dog, but it's something anyway. So, and more people betting money lines, by the way, which by the way I love that because I've always found personally I like money line analysis better than point spread analysis. That's why baseball is my best sport. Okay. Anyway, let's go to Twitter. We have a Twitter question of the week. It's also a Facebook question of the week because you can get involved with us either way. You send us a question at Twitter, follow us there at Jim Feist Sports, or on Facebook, friend us at Proline TV. If you have a question, we'll be glad to answer it. And we also do a drawing where you can win $100 worth of plays from one of the handicappers of your choice. And this is an NBA question. Any NBA teams, sleeper teams, that may be ready to turn a corner. It doesn't say who sent it in, but that's a good question. John, we haven't had you in the conversation for a few minutes here, so let's get you involved right now. How about an NBA sleeper team that could make some noise down the road?
Sure, I'll go with the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, this is a team that right now they're outside the playoff bubble, right around the playoff bubble, and they got off to a bad start, but they're not having a bad start anymore. They're actually playing very well. I think they already have turned a corner. A 7-2 run, both straight up and against the spread. That included a 5-game winning streak. And when you really look inside those numbers, you can see what has happened with this team. The difference is defense. Last couple of years, Memphis has been a powerhouse defensive team. Didn't get off to a very good start defensively this season, but before that 5-game winning streak, they were giving up 97.4 points and over 46% shooting from the field. All of a sudden, this 5-game streak, they allowed 90.8 points and 41.6% shooting. One of the games was against the Sacramento Kings last week. That's an up-tempo, young offensive team that's great at running. They don't always play defense, but they can score. Well, Memphis held them to 90 points in a 91-90 win, had 13 block shots, 4 block shots apiece from Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol. He's back now, Gasol is, after a sprained ACL. So they have their physical big front court in there. And one addition is Courtney Lee. I mean, here's a guy who had been with Boston in recent years, and he was brought there to be a 3-point shooter and a role player. He never really fit in and saw his playing time diminish. So Memphis took a shot and made a recent trade with him, and they put him into the starting role. He's a big guard who can shoot the 3, and for now, in a short period of time, he's found a nice niche. In 4 straight games, he started and averaged 16.3 points per game. So this Memphis team, I think, has already turned a corner. And the way to look at them, they're on a recent 3-0 run under the total. When they're at home facing a team that's basically a bad road team, a team with less winning percentage than 40% on the road, Memphis is 13-5 under the total. So that's where I look at it. I think Memphis is a good play-on team over the next month, and certainly when they're at home, a team to look at under the total.
Well, I'll give you the Warriors, who I don't know, I guess they qualify as a sleeper. I mean, everybody knows they're pretty good, but they're sitting in the 6th seed in the West. If they're in the East, they'd be behind Miami and Indiana. Pacers look like the best team in the league right now, and Miami obviously is very strong. Golden State's problem is they're in the West, so they get overshadowed by some teams. But I like the way this team shapes up in terms of being able to do something come playoff time. You've got Curry and Thompson who can get very hot shooting the basketball, and they run the offense. But they've got some other guys in this team. Andrew Bogut, when he's able to play, when he's healthy, is still a really good defensive weapon. Iguodala hasn't really come together. He hasn't really put it together. But I think he will at some point. The guy's a tremendously solid player. Their field goal shooting defense is 4th in the NBA. That's really good. The Bulls are better, but that's to be expected with Thibodeau, who's just a great defensive coach. And the only other 2 teams better in that category, the Thunder and Indiana. So Golden State gets looked upon as just this run-and-gun style basketball team, but they're really not that anymore. And I think that's going to serve them well come playoff times. They've got to stay healthy, obviously. And the other thing is, my opinion, for what it's worth, I think they're a better team when David Lee's not on the court. He can't defend at all. And I like this team better as a team that plays defense and shoots the outside shot with Thompson and Curry, who, you hope can light it up, and Curry certainly can. I don't think they're going to be an easy out come playoff time. They weren't last year, and they could go in as a 6 seed, and wouldn't shock me if they knock off the 3 seed, whether it's Oklahoma City or somebody like that. I think it's doable for this basketball team. So I'll give you the Warriors. Jim, about one for you.
Well, I'm looking at the Washington Wizards. Washington's a young team. They rank about number 5 in the East. They got young players. I mean, John Wall and Bradley Beal, both in their early 20s. They're very quick. They're good offensive players. They also can play some defense. They're ranked 6th in turnovers. The quickness that they have because they're young. They are, decent defensive ball club. They won 3 in a row twice, winning twice as dogs against the Bulls in Miami. They got a 4-game road trip coming up. The theory is they'll struggle a little bit on the road, but then they have a 5-game homestand, which they might do pretty well with. So I'm looking at Washington. We're going back and staying in the NBA. We all know Indiana is very strong, and it seems like the Heat are just kind of going through the motions in the regular season. And we've seen that in the past years with other teams that start to age. They start resting players during the regular season because pretty much everybody gets into the playoffs and then turn it up. I can remember years ago when Houston had all those great players, and every game they had 2 or 3 of them sitting on the bench, but they got in the playoffs and they were great. So I wouldn't put Miami Heat down too much because when it gets to playoff time, they're going to be strong. But Dave, going back to you, the Western teams, who do you like in the West? You got a lot of strong teams out West. You're not talking about 2 teams like you are in the East.
No, the West is loaded. I think Westbrook, when he returns, Oklahoma City goes back to, in my opinion, being the best team in the West. The problem for them is that at some point you're going to have to go through San Antonio, and that's the best coach team in the NBA. And they're, they're getting up there. So there aren't too many windows left for the Spurs. They've come real close the last couple of years. They will get that one more championship. But I do think Oklahoma City can beat them in the playoffs. I will tell you, I really like the Pacers. The difference being, they almost beat Miami. They gave Miami fits the last 2 years. And last year, they took them, they were right there in that series. And the difference this year, it's not that, I still think Miami's great. And I completely agree with what you said about them resting players and kind of just doing what they got to do. The problem is that Indiana's going to have the home court advantage. And Lance Stevenson has taken his game to another level this year. This guy can really, he's a kid who came out early, only played the 1 year in college. It took him a while to develop, but holy cow, is he taking off. This guy's a great player. And I actually think Indiana is just flat out better than Miami at this point. I think Indiana's going to go to the finals this year. If I had to pick the finals, I know this is chalky, but I'd take Indiana and Oklahoma City to get to the finals right now. John, if you had to pick 2 teams to get to the finals right now, who would they be?
Yeah, I think in the East, it's those 2, Indiana and Miami. And I'm like you, I prefer Indiana. Their depth is just phenomenal, and their star power, depth, and attention to defense, to me, looks unbeatable. I think they can beat an aging team like Miami. So I would take them as the favorite. And then the West is just so loaded with teams. I mean, you get some long shot teams like Portland. I don't think they don't pay enough attention to defense to get there. But Memphis, Golden State do play enough defense. And then you got the kingpins with Oklahoma City and San Antonio. If I had to pick a matchup, it'd be Indiana, and I'll take a long shot with the Golden State Warriors.
Ooh.
Yeah, surprised.
The one, since we're all talking about Indiana as being so, so strong, and the East is a little weak, so they have basically one solid team to beat unless somebody steps up. I don't know who it would be. But the knock on Indiana was when they get down to the crunch time, their guards have let them down. They stand around, they watch one guy try to take over. They don't really have the movement at the end. That's been a killer for them in the past couple years. Have they changed that? Have they fixed that problem?
I don't think I think their guard plays decent. But I love the front court. Love it. George, this guy's just a weapon anywhere. He keeps getting better. I don't know what he'll give him off the bench now, but Granger's still capable. And then you get Stevenson, to me, is the big difference in this team. And Hibbert is just ridiculous inside. And David West doesn't get any publicity, but boy, he's a handful on both ends of the court too.
Very good player.
He's a great player, and that's the perils of being kind of a low key guy who plays in Indiana, which isn't the biggest market in the world and doesn't get the attention that, say, if you were in New York, he'd be a massive star. But he spent his career in two smaller markets. I think the guy's dramatically underrated. I also like their coach a lot, a whole lot. Vogel, he runs some really good stuff. See, the thing to me is that I really thought the Pacers were going to knock off Miami last year. I thought the teams were that close. And nothing I saw has convinced me otherwise. It's like, okay, coming in this season, this is not a new prediction for me. I picked Indiana before the season started to come out of the East, and I'm staying with that. Now, I did pick Oklahoma City to win the whole thing, so we'll have to see on that. But the more I've seen out of the Pacers, the more I think they might actually be the best team in the league. I know the record gets, they've got a little easier road because of what you said. There's like two decent teams in the East. And Brooklyn, now that they've come together, the Nets are pretty good, but there's not much out there. So the record might get a little inflated, but I think this is a legit basketball team, and I think they're ready to step forward this year and knock off Miami. And then LeBron will go play someplace else.